Hello, I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic.com, and it's Monday. You know what that means. It means it's exactly the same as every other day at the moment. But that doesn't mean we can't have some fun. So let's have some fun by looking at the headline, shall we? A released WWE star was set to join a faction on Raw. A released WWE Superstar has filed some interesting new trademarks. And Kurt Angle has shared which match he thinks could headline WrestleMania 37. Stay tuned. Now, as you're almost definitely aware, almost 2 weeks ago now, WWE laid off a huge number of superstars, backstage agents, producers, and various other staff members. One of those superstars was Sarah Logan, who had been used on TV that week, admittedly in a losing effort to Shayna Baszler, after which Shayna Baszler kayfabe broke her arm, but she was used on the Monday, let go on the Wednesday. Various reports have circulated since then, saying that WWE planned on using Sarah Logan even though she'd been let go from the company. Obviously, she's got the 90-day no-compete clause, but the plan was to use her on TV in some capacity following her release, but then still let her go after the 90 days. Confusing stuff. Anyway, we've got a bit of an update on this, a really interesting one from The Observer, where Dave Meltzer says he believes that there was a segment where she would be linked up with the Viking Raiders, but it was dropped. However, it may still take place in the future. But even if she is on Raw next week, that doesn't mean her firing was rescinded. The no-compete clause for the recently released wrestlers will expire on July 15th, and currently all of the fired wrestlers, even the ones that are being used on TV, Drake Maverick or Sarah Logan, who may end up being used on TV, will still be let go. That's what we believe at the moment. But yeah, this is a really interesting one. Obviously, Sarah Logan is the real-life wife of Raymond Rowe, aka Eric the Viking, from the Viking Raiders. Viking Raiders popped up on Raw doing something rather interesting this week, sort of doing a bastardized version of carpool karaoke, where they would do a bit of poetry-ish and then say Viking Raiders. It was bad. And they've had a bit of a rough time since coming up to the main roster. They were introduced, obviously, as the Viking Experience. Still don't know why that happened. And then they lost. They had a great winning streak, and then they lost in Saudi Arabia to Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson, who have also been released. And since then, they've been used occasionally on TV. They're still having the odd squash match with jobbers. They are still being used on Raw. I think this would have been great for Sarah Logan. Not just for storyline reasons, because I think it would be a really nice fit there, and she's into that. Like, they do the whole LARPing thing and all that. Like, it's something that she'd be really passionate about. So I think her heart would be in making that character work. But also, on a really humanistic level, it means that she could travel and be backstage and continue to work with her husband. And now that appears that it won't be the case, which is really, really awful for her. I think it was a shame that she was released. I think she's a really, really talented wrestler. We'll see what she does next. This could still happen. It's got to be said, like, the reports are saying that this still could happen. Maybe she'll be introduced and that we'll have a faction for 2 months and then she'll be let go anyway. I really, really hope not. She's a superstar, a wrestler with loads and loads of potential, but it's another one of those that, time will tell. Next up, we've got some trademark news. Aren't trademarks fun, right? This is really interesting. Another one of those recently released WWE superstars. This time we are talking about Zack Ryder. Now, Zack Ryder is a guy who, I think it's fair to say, in WWE had a bit of a rough time of it. He premiered Z True Long Island Story, something that just hadn't been done before. The YouTube show was massive. It was doing hundreds of thousands of hits. All of his merch was selling out. He was over as hell. People were chanting his name on Raw, on SmackDown, all over the place, over some really established names as well. I'm sure you'll remember. But WWE, after pushing him briefly, that push was halted very suddenly, and it was a real shame. Like, he went on to do some cool stuff, and like, he won the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania. It was a great moment. He replaced Neville. That was wonderful. He won the tag team titles with Kurt Hawkins, who was also released almost 2 weeks ago now. But he never really got to the heights that I think we thought he would. It always felt like WWE, because they didn't have initial creative control of what Zack Ryder was doing, they they didn't want to use him in the way that they perhaps should have done. And I would argue that WWE and various other wrestling companies still owe a lot of what they do online to Zack Ryder and what he did with Z True Long Island Story. He was a bit of a pioneer. I think that's fair to say. Anyway, he has registered 2 new trademarks. Quite interesting, these. The first one, Always Ready, and that's always with a Z or Z. And that's a hashtag that he uses now on his social media, and that has been registered in the trademark class of apparel clothing. So expect to see that pop up on some t-shirts. But the more interesting one is the term Internet Champion, which has also been registered in that t-shirt apparel clothing class, but also in a wider entertainment class, which will allow him to have protection over that when it's used on various TV shows, online. He will own Internet Champion. Sorry, WCPW. So that's really interesting to see. I'm just throwing this out there. Zack Ryder is a guy who has such a tremendous understanding of wrestling, the wrestling fan base, because he is such a fan of wrestling, I guess, but he really understands how to get people behind him, especially on digital platforms. So I think he's got a great opportunity to sort of one-up WWE here and do the 24/7 title better than they will, and better than they have, rather, I guess. In that he could be using that, defending the Internet Championship, and have some sort of exclusivity over that on any promotion that he goes to, and he will own that, and he will be more valuable to any promotion that he works for because he's bringing a piece of intellectual property with him, which is really marketable, and that people will want to see that belt defended, essentially. Another one of those that, time will tell. Interesting also, just a bit of an addition to this story, and don't read into this too much, because he is mates with Cody. Cody, after he was released, put out a big long post on Instagram and Twitter talking about how wonderful the former Zack Ryder is. However, those trademarks have been registered by an attorney by the name of Michael E. Dockins. You probably haven't heard of him. I hadn't heard of him, but he's the guy who has been dealing with trademarks for all of AEW's intellectual properties. Can we put 2 and 2 together? Is this Cody just saying, hey, you should use this guy? He's really good. Cody's certainly been very good at registering trademarks of his own recently. Interesting stuff. As I say, the no-compete expires July the 15th. I think we'll all know about this at the same time. I can't see, if he does go to AEW, I can't see them announcing him ahead of time. He's a big enough star that if he popped up on one of the AEW Dynamite shows or even on pay-per-view, that would be a huge moment, and AEW have been very good at those moments, those debuts. So yeah, we'll see. I really truly wish all the best for all of the released superstars and agents and all that, but Zack Ryder is one that really stood out. He'd been with the company for an awful long time. I'm really excited to see what he does next. Next up, just a quick one. Let's talk about Jon Moxley, who recently made his return to WWE on WWE Backstage for about 2 seconds. If you've not seen it, first of all, have you been living under a rock? Go and seek it out because it's wonderful. If you haven't seen it, I'll just describe it really quickly. So Renee Young is there hosting the show, of course. She's chatting away with Booker T and Xavier Woods. She's doing so from home due to current circumstances. In comes Moxley with the dog, pops it in frame. It pops Booker, it pops Xavier, it pops Renee, but the laughter has to stop because WWE were not happy about this, apparently. Jon Moxley speaking to PW Insider, saying that him gate crashing that show landed Renee in some hot water backstage with WWE's higher ups. He didn't go into too much detail about it, and Mike Johnson, who was talking to him, swiftly moved on to another question. But we've got a bit of a further update on that. He went on to talk with Wrestling Inc., and he said apparently he didn't know that Renee was hosting backstage when he entered into that room. Apparently he was roaming the couple's house when he heard the dog barking and got as much of a fright as anyone when he realised what was going on. He was only trying to figure out why the dog was making so much noise. I don't know if I believe it personally. I don't care, to be honest. It was wonderful. It was really, really funny. it was great. I can understand, I guess, why WWE would be upset about this. You could argue that it's promotion for AEW, you know, the AEW champion popping up on one of WWE's shows. It's just funny, isn't it? It's just funny. I don't think Renee Young will get any serious punishment for this. First of all, it just wasn't her fault at all. It was the dog's fault, if anything. But yeah, she's so good at what she does, and I don't think they'd want to punish her very much. But yeah, I guess we'll see. But it was funny. Just go and watch the video. Go and watch the video. Damn dog. And finally, Kurt Angle, another one of those recently released WWE members of staff, has commented on what he thinks could be next year's WrestleMania main event. So he was doing a Q&A on Facebook, and one fan asked, what is a dream match between two superstars that have never wrestled before? To which Angle replied, Aleister Black versus Drew McIntyre. And he says, could be next year WrestleMania main event. Both are exceptional talents. I don't know how much you can read into this either. Obviously, Kurt was working backstage. He was working primarily on the Raw brand. And he was very, very close, and still is very close, with Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman has been it's been reported that he's really, really hot on these two talents also. Drew, obviously, the push of a lifetime right now. Aleister Black ascending the card also. So could it happen? I think it's a slightly tough sell for sort of lapsed fans, and WWE like to put big names at the top of the WrestleMania card because it attracts so many casual fans and lapsed fans. So will it happen? I would put money on it not happening, because WWE have got a hell of a job if they're going to build both of those guys up to the level where they're going to sell lots and lots of pay-per-views. Drew is on the road there already. Drew, an exceptional talent, of course. A bit of a further note on this. So I did a bit of research and looked across various bookies and what they're offering, or what they're suggesting, what the top odds are for next year's WrestleMania main event, the WrestleMania 37 main event. And the top 5, according to the bookies, one of them, after this news broke, was Drew McIntyre versus Aleister Black. Next up, Drew McIntyre versus Roman Reigns. Obviously, they're on different brands at the moment. Roman Reigns is off TV. Don't say his name. Who knows? Edge versus Seth Rollins. Interesting. I think we'll see that match. I don't know if we'll see it as a WrestleMania main event. Will we see it for a title? Who knows? Brock Lesnar versus Matt Riddle. A match which would no doubt sell a lot of pay-per-views. Obviously, there's apparently real-life beef there between the two. I'd love to see it. Out of all of these, this is the one that I'd probably like to see the most, actually. The favourite, however, is Roman Reigns versus The Rock. Who knows? I mean, take all of this with a massive pile of salt. WWE would love to put that match on. No doubt about it. Imagine the eyes that it would put on the product if you got Roman Reigns versus his cousin, The Rock. I'd love to see it as well, personally. I'd be really interested by it. Will the fans turn on Roman if he beats The Rock? Probably. I guess they already have anyway. Right, that's it. That's it for your news. Check back in a couple of hours with another news update from Jack. And yeah, have a wonderful Monday. It is Monday, isn't it? Yeah, said it at the beginning of the video. Call your mum. Tell her you love her. Before I do it.